Welcome, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning if it is morning for any one of you, wherever you are in the here and now. Welcome to Facebook Live on the Facebook group. I'm here along with our panel, on normal panel that I'm sure everyone is used to. We have Caesar, who is a channel and a medium and a spiritual teacher. April, who is a channel and a medium, spiritual teacher. Kelly, our Qigong teacher. Good evening. Louise, our author, and she does her own spiritual teaching. So welcome, Louise. And we have Travis, who is a musician as well as a spiritual teacher and runs the Tuesday meditation group for the group. So thank you, Travis. And of course, our one and only Eileen, who's here to share her insights and wisdom as well keep us streamlined. So today we are going to try a different format. Eileen is going to post the link to the Zoom session. If anybody's interested in joining us live, so you're more than welcome. Join us live, ask a question, or if you have an insight to share, come share the insight, and you're more than welcome to drop or stay with us, however you would like to handle your live recording. The one thing is the session is recorded and it is posted in a public format. So be careful when you speak of any personal situation that it will be publicly available to all your friends and family to rewatch. So please be careful of the live recording. So let's get started. I did post on the chat a question that somebody asked. I don't know if y'all can read it. Can y'all read it's a really long post. I have a very conflicting life. I meditate all the time to stay grounded and find peace with the divine. But I'm also an advocate a significant amount of time for humanity, animal welfare, and the environment, which does get me angry, boisterous. I have to have a voice for these things, as I, by nature, am so passionate about them, which is why I have to meditate. What if the small things don't, but being an empath, the bigger picture, like people suffering on the planet in pain from misuse, animal cruelty, the injustices to all of these and all living things, how do I keep the balance? It's pretty long, but I think the gist of it, what she is asking is, I am an advocate for animal cruelty, for humanity, and I feel really passionate about this. How am I going to keep my peace? I do meditate and I stay grounded. So she does have a presence practice. April, did you want to get started since you have been away from us dearly for a few weeks? So you may be full of new insights.
Maybe. I don't know. One of the things that I believe, maybe somebody can correct me or confirm, I think it's Lumerians. They tend to have a love for the animals and the plants and the trees and the flowers. So it's an innate thing they come here with. Where I go with this, especially with what we have going on in society right now, as far as the pandemic, the being locked down, businesses are open, they're closed, schools are open, they're closed, this back and forth, is that there is a reason and a purpose for everything. That's where I always go. that everything is divinely planned, that God has not forgotten us, the universe hasn't forgot us, spirit, whatever you want to call it. And I rest in, you know, she's doing, it sounds like she's doing a lot of work, or she, maybe it's not a she, doing a lot of work. And I think that that's another thing is we can only do our part. We can only do our part. We can only do as much as we can do as one person. But I would go back to knowing that, going back to when she's doing this meditation, that everything is perfectly designed and everything is okay. That's where I would go. You can't fix everything. You can't. And if you sit and think about all the things that you're not doing, then of course it's going to seem very overwhelming. And that's how I do it. I go into meditation, or I go into breathing, or I put on a sound meditation, and I try to recenter myself, and I try to just stay there and know that everything is perfectly designed.
So allowing what is to be.
Acceptance. Yeah.
Acceptance.
And yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, April. Caesar, did you have anything, any input? I know you are an animal activist as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I can relate, and especially her being an empath. She's feeling the, when we do what we do with the animals, and her being active and as an activist, she gets to observe a lot of the pitfalls and the and just the saddened stuff that that animals are placed in, you know, situations, sometimes by humans, sometimes just naturally, and it is a very tough thing to endure. Especially being an empath, I know she probably feels it twice as much as somebody who's not quite as empathic. What I would say, as far as the way to bring the balance in, is to bring more presence outside of the meditation into what you're doing naturally with the animals by simply observing the animals, because there's no better teacher to me than watching any animal in nature, because they are all about presence. They have been my best teacher, quite honestly. And I know there's probably more hardships. I mean, heartache, you know, as an animal activist, because you're fighting for, you know, the rights of the voiceless, and it's hard to go through that, and that's what drives us to do what we do, and it is very hurtful. I mean, it's, you know, when you see what people do to animals and stuff like that, it's very, and it's hard not to get angry, but I used to get very angry and meditated on it a while, but after a while, I just decided that you can only do what you can do, and you walk away gracefully. But during the midst of everything, when you're active in doing what you do with the animals, and to any degree, to bring presence into what you're doing by, like I said, simply observing. You know, the compassion's always going to be there. And like Toli says, there's no better noble feeling for a human than when empathy meets compassion. And that's exactly what you're doing. So just, you know, just stay grateful and bring the presence into what you're doing by observing the animals as they are, whatever shape, condition, or whatever. We, you know, the animals have such a sad story, but, you know, you are making a huge, huge difference to the world. You're bringing that much more, you know, compassion, and you're putting it back out there. So I would use that just to clean up the wording a little bit, to find the balance. You know, Toli says again, you get there by realizing you are already there. So, you know, keep that in mind, and just like I said, just observe, and you know, try not to get so attached to what you're doing. The how is more important, or as important as the what. And I'll leave you with that.
Perfect. This reminds me of a talk that Eckhart Tolle had with Elizabeth Lesser. Elizabeth Lesser is the co-founder of the Omega Institute. It is one of the premier organizations that does retreats and spiritual workshops, right? And I don't know, it's been around for 20, 30, 40 years. So what they talk about is joyful activism, like what you said, right? How you do the activism is much more important than what. How much consciousness is flowing into your activism is much more important. So the boisterousness, being angry is not the right response because you're just introducing the reactivity into your activism. So that's a great point, Caesar. Thank you. Travis, did you want to speak about, I'm not going to read it again.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
You see the passage, right? Go ahead. Thank you.
I think I can summarize the question a little bit, at least in the way that I interpreted it.
Perfect.
I love the question. It's in many ways it's kind of an age-old question that has been very relevant down the ages, because essentially what it's saying, at least how I'm reading it, is how can I, in a world that is not at peace, can I find peace while living in a world that is not at peace, in a world that is riddled with injustice? Where do I find peace when that's the world in which I live? And it's beautiful because it shows that the person cares about the welfare and well-being of others, whether it be plants or animals or humans or any living creature. So that's good. And my attitude is that we don't need to look to this world, the relative, for our peace, for our salvation. The injustices that we all collectively bear witness to are observably transient in nature. They're not eternal injustices. They live for a time and they go in time. They belong to time and they'll end in time. And so to me, what is important is that we are able to tap into the dimension of peace, which does not belong to the relative. It's the absolute, it's the timeless dimension of life. There's a dimension of life that is undisturbable. And when we can find that dimension comes into this world through us. And it's not our job to derive peace from the world. It's our job to allow peace to flow through us into this world. It comes from the beyond, if you will. It comes from another, it's otherworldly. And so, because if we have to wait for every mouth to be fed to find peace, if we have to wait for every injustice to be righted to find peace, no one here will ever find peace. And I look at like the Buddha or different sages down the ages, and you see they live in the same world we live in with so much wrongdoing. And yet somehow they are in almost a blissful sort of tranquility. And I think it's because they're tapped into that which is infinitely real all the time. And in that way, they're able to live gracefully in a world that is relatively real. And a little bit of that grace, it pours through them into this world. So I feel like that's our job to emulate that, to be that way. So I hope that answers the question in some way, because I really feel like that's our contribution, is like what you were just saying, Poonam, with the quality of what we do, the energy behind it. And I know I've had times in life where I'm doing work, and if I get frustrated, I can stop, step back, reset, and make sure that what's flowing through me is coming through in a joyous and enthusiastic way, because that's really what I want my contribution to be. I might be painting a house, but on the surface, I'm painting the house, but the real contribution is unseen. It's the energetic quality that flows through me painting the house. So that's a good example of something like that. So I appreciate the question and the chance to say something to it. Thanks.
I do as well. That's why I posted. I picked it up from the group page. I don't even remember where I picked it up from. So it was an amazing kind of like paradoxical post. So what I would say is, if they were at that much peace and they were doing the animal activism, they would bring all the more healing around them. They would have more and more people support their cause, like give more donations, whatever it may be. So thank you for that insight, Travis. Kelly, did you want to talk about this topic? Thank you. Thank you, Travis.
The key to this question is actually the very first sentence. The belief that this person has that they have a conflicting life is the key to the whole question. If a person is this attached to their self-judgment and their self-denial and judging the outside world, then they are going to continue to view the world as such. So whether or not they're an empath or whether or not they're doing advocacy, I spent almost 30 years doing environmental advocacy and being an environmental social activist, and went through this whole process myself. The anger, the judgment, the denial, the rejection of anything that did not fit my own worldview, especially when I was younger in my 20s. And my thing that has evolved in my process is understanding that it is the attachment to any belief system that there is conflict creates conflict. So this person's strong belief in the fact that they have a life of conflict is causing everything they feel to be viewed through that lens. It is always hard to understand and witness and see animals being abused. Animals are elements of the natural realities that are directly tied to the elemental realms and some of the primal realms of creation. And this is one of the reasons I feel that people have such a strong response and empathize so much and get so emotional about animals. One of the things that I've come to understand too is that the natural world has its own order and tends to operate in a lot more realities than humans like to believe exist. And a lot of animals that have supposedly gone extinct have just migrated to a higher dimension, or a dimension that we cannot see. And this is the lesson of the natural world, to actually understand how to feel deeper aspects of the reality that we are living in as humans. Because as humans, we have a capacity to be open, to be empathetic, to be naturally aware of our gifts and our connection to the natural world. And this is one of the amazing, beautiful things about being human. Again, understanding the attachment to the belief that life is about conflict is something that this person should look at, because it is when we are attached to that whole concept, it's, you know, the old adage of like, what you focus on, you create. So if they are focused on their conflict, their turmoil, their judgment, and their anger, they need to look at that. They need to look at how they are supporting that through their perception of their life as conflict.
Thank you, Kelly. It's amazing that yesterday Eckhart did his Be the Light course. It's webcasted on Tuesdays, and he talked about, somebody asked him some question about divisiveness, and he talked about this exact thing of labeling. If I label, I'm the activist and you're the person that is not an activist or not an advocate for animal rights, right? That's where I created the enemy. The moment I labeled you the non-activist, me the activist, you the Republican, me the Democrat, or me the Republican, you the Democrat, right? We created the other. The moment we create the other, the ego has taken over. And so our activism is also going to get destroyed. Everybody has to understand the reason why Martin Luther King Jr. and the reason why Gandhi were successful, because there was no identification with what they were fighting for. It was just a selfless giving of a mass consciousness of people, just selflessly giving up themselves for their country, right? So there was no identification, oh, me this and you the other. Everybody was one. There was a oneness, knowing of the oneness. So thank you for that, Kelly. That's the conflict, right? Me, the activist, and the empath. Empath is also a label. I've made an identification in my mind that I am the empath, and I'm not the dwelling in the unknowable, the formlessness that Travis was talking about. If I dwell in the unknowable, in the formlessness of who I am, I'm not an empath, nor am I an animal activist. I just do what needs to be done in this present moment. In this present moment, if an animal is getting, cruelty is being done to an animal, I will save the animal, right?
And again, if I may just add, looking at things from a soul perspective, we get so caught up in the third dimensional linear reality and what we've been conditioned to believe in as good and bad without actually listening to the trees, listening to the four-leggeds and the winged and the insects, and understanding that there is a much deeper reality to what nature presents us than what we can see with our eyes and hear with our ears.
That's what April started off with, right? That was the
Yep.
point she was making. Thank you, Ken. Louise, did you want to talk about this topic?
Well, I think it's funny because you pretty much said what I was going to say. But yeah, I think a lot of it is not identifying with being a certain label, you know, an empath or whatever. And then the other thing is, I think what's really helped me a lot is when I start to see challenges or something that passion arises where I feel it's injustice or whatever, is to the one thing that helps me a lot is just to have that understanding that that's what life's about, is to bring challenges, and it's all about how you respond or react to that challenge. And then again, I was thinking that same thing about being careful not to label yourself as an empath or whatever, because then that becomes your identity. And then it's hard to see anything else because you're stuck in that situation. And so those were the things that came up for me.
Perfect. Thank you, Louise. Next time I'll make you go first. Thank you. Eileen, did you want to contribute to the topic?
I think you and one other, maybe it was Travis, had said items that I was going to mention. But
so those were the things for me.
Perfect. Thank you, Louise. Next time I'll make you go first. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Poonam.
You're welcome.
But I did just want to say that for me, because I am, I do advocacy work. And so maybe not necessarily in that same area, but in others. And for me, I have found it to be most beneficial to focus on my own presence in the moment, as well as thinking about it as a response and presence, not reaction. So there's no like reactivity. It's just holding space and being there and being kind of like the light, but not feeding into any of the drama or, things can kind of go south fast, but that doesn't happen with me. But so a lot of the things that I think you said, Poonam, was kind of the things I was going to talk about. So, but I did want to add that.
Thank you. So I see a question from Lakshmi. Oprah says that when she gets into someone else's car, she asks them to turn the radio off. I always wondered why. And a subsequent question from Lakshmi. Hi, Lakshmi. Are animals born again as animals? Do they ever evolve? And a subsequent question from Lakshmi. Hi, Lakshmi. Are animals born again as animals? Okay. Louise, did you want to speak about Lakshmi's question? Why does Oprah ask people to turn off their radio when?
The only reason I would think she would do that is just to reduce the amount of noise and bring more presence into their conversation or what have you. But that's the only thing I can think of.
Perfect.
I really do.
Thank you, Louise. And I'll go around the panel real quick. I think somebody's speaker has feedback on it. Perfect. Thank you. April, did you want to talk about why would Oprah say turn off the radio?
My thought was the same as Louise, that it was so that the radio wasn't a distraction for her to actually connect and have a deeper conversation, have presence there. And the second question, I do not believe that animals evolve into humans. I believe that when you're at that level, that you're at that level, and you don't evolve into a human. It's kind of the same theory of Bob Proctor said with The Secret. He said, and my daughter always laughs with this, that a snake is not a broken lizard. It's not. It's not a broken lizard. Now others may have different theories, but for me, I also don't believe that humans regress to animal state, but others are gonna say, no, I want to be an eagle when I come back, and I've always wanted to be a wild horse. But I just don't believe I believe that it's divided up. Maybe somebody can expand on that. So that is what I think about the two questions from her.
Perfect. Thank you. Caesar, did you want to talk about the two questions that Lakshmi posted? Thank you.
Why Oprah turns down the radio? I'm guessing it's because she's a big fan of Eckhart Tolle's, and she understands that listening is the best gift you can give somebody. Truly listening and understanding. So I'll take a stab at that, wondering what Oprah's thinking and why. And the second part of the question was, do animals evolve back into animals? I think yes. I think they stay animals. I think they do. I mean, I think the same applies for them as it does for us in different forms. I think Kelly touched on that last week brilliantly, and I agree. Animals, I believe, stay animals. I joke with people who are very unconscious, who are starting this journey, and I always say maybe next time you'll come back as a worm or a leaf, and you'll get it right. But yeah, same applies. Animals stay animals.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Caesar.
Yes.
Kelly, did you want to talk about Lakshmi's couple of questions? Thank you.
Sure. I agree with what April and Caesar said about, when Oprah gets in a car, it's just a very simple, polite thing to do, to be considerate, to not have to talk over the radio. I mean, I do that myself all the time. When I'm by myself, I'll listen to the radio, listen to my loud music, and my heart, my Celtic stuff. And when someone else is in the car, it's like I like to be able to have a conversation. And I also agree with what Caesar was saying about animals, and what April said as well. The animal kingdom and the elemental realms are sort of like very specific layers of reality, and humans, we like to project these concepts and sort of fantasize about things, both to titillate ourselves and also to threaten other people's sense of reality. So as far as I'm concerned, animals stay animals. There are very specific reasons for the natural world having certain expressions of energy in our lives to communicate other aspects of reality to us and with us. And I believe that animals are very specifically there to do exactly that. And humans they do not have the same layers of energy, or like they don't have the egoic, etheric, monadic, Buddhic, solar layers of energy around the body that humans do. Humans are very unique in the number of layers of information that they have energetically. Animals are very, very specific to the elemental realm and do not have sort of the same level of consciousness or the egoic mind that humans do. So there is no sort of cross-pollination or movement back and forth in those layers of energy, as far as I understand it.
Thank you, Kelly. Travis, did you want to contribute to this question?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, first, I'd just like to say it's exciting to see some new faces on the screen. This is neat. And in regards to the question around Oprah's requests to turn off the radio when entering someone else's car, I mean, I could only speculate on why she would want to do that. I guess my response would be similar to others here on the panel, that there's a desire to bring some attention to stillness and to a shared space, a shared meeting point. I'm really into music, and my stereo, and my stereo is worth almost as much as my old truck. But I also recognize that a lot of people aren't that fond of the kind of music I like to listen to, and it's not their favorite thing. So if I can sense that, I usually turn it off myself or turn it down. But for me, it's actually a call to attention. My music is a huge part of my practice. So if anyone gets in my car, beware. And in regards to animals reincarnating into humans, I I don't know. And I don't want to pretend to know about something that I don't. So the short answer is I really don't know. What I do feel confident to speak to in regards to that question is, as I see it, on a broader level, there is no other, there is no differentiated self. There is only the one undifferentiated self. From that perspective, reincarnation doesn't apply. Reincarnation, it suggests and belongs to the realm of time. Things that are born in time exist for a time and then end after a time. And it's the relative to become, to exist, to be incarnate. And I don't know. What I do know is that which is alive in all things incarnate, all that is born, all that comes to be is the same. It's the same in you, it's the same in me, it's the same in the animal, it's the same in the plant, it's the same in the stars, it's the same in the empty space, it's the same in God, it's the same. And that is where my attention seems to want to return, is to that. That's my answer.
Thank you, Travis. Eileen, did you want to contribute to the question from Lakshmi, or you agree?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you, Eileen.
Oh.
So I see Tina joined, as well as Linda and Faith. I will start off with Tina, who joined first. Tina, did you have a question for the panel?
It's already in the box. She asked me to ask it.
Oh.
Do you want me to read it?
So the question is, how do you explain source to someone who is not conscious or awake, has no understanding about Eckhart Tolle or any spiritual understanding, but asks about what I have been learning because they have noticed my change? April, did you want to start off with this question? Thank you, Eileen.
I think I have run into this a lot in my life now that I'm looking at the question of people not understanding, why are you so calm? Why are you happy? Why are you, not reacting? Source to me is peace. That's what it is. It's peace. It's in which equates to love. And then consciousness is awareness. Consciousness to me is being aware. It's when you wake up. It's when you can step outside of yourself and become aware of yourself. And I'm trying to rack my brain on how did I ever explain this to other people? And how do I continue to explain this to other people? And I think that it just takes me right back to, if you have a longing to just be happy and to have peace in life, then you start seeking out these teachings. So where would they start with? How would you start to explain that? What I started with is probably maybe not the best place, but is changing the perception of source, changing the perception of God, our God, if you listen to Deepak, he has this series where he talks about God. Our God starts out as a very mean God, a very controlling God, you must be subservient. And now our God is evolving into what it actually is a loving God, right? So that's kind of where I have started a lot with people. But I think if you wanted to make it simple, I would say, well, I was tired of being unhappy, and I wanted to find peace, and I wanted to find love. And this is where I found it. I found it in source and in consciousness.
Awesome. Thank you, April. Louise, did you want to respond to this question from Tina? Thank you.
Well, I feel like every situation is different, so it's hard to say, like, there's not one set way, because people, you know, ask questions according to where they're at that time, or what I find that I tend to do is people will ask, like, you know, like the kids will be all crazy and yelling and stuff, and they'll say, like, how do you, you know, stay calm? Or and it's not so much like trying to teach them about what I've learned on my spiritual path. It might just be more of sharing in that situation. And, like, you know, I've learned to not react to when they're, you know, very loud, or I've learned how to talk to them in this certain way, or, you know, I will put my finger up like this and they know that it's time to calm down. So then they have more of like some concrete ideas of what I do, and it's not so much telling them, but showing them. Because I also believe that people will find their way when they are looking. And so it's not so much to try to explain it all and expect them to understand, but to just maybe in little pieces of whatever is happening at that moment is kind of like how I've, you know, feel has been most effective with other people. And then, you know, it evolves the conversation, of course, but I think just not having that feeling that you have to explain it all.
Perfect. Thank you, Louise. I think that is the key, Louise, to know that no explanation is needed. That we don't have to, like Eckhart says, right? I'm a spiritual teacher when I'm sitting and giving the talk. Beyond that stage, I am just formless presence. If I'm in the grocery store, so if I'm with somebody who's unconscious, then I'm just formless, giving them spaciousness. And it is okay to not explain who I am or what I am or what I'm doing or what is my spiritual practice. Why did I change? There's no reason to offer that to that person. They will make their own journey. They will make their own spiritual path, because that's the evolutionary impulse, as Eckhart says. So thank you. Thank you for that pointer. Caesar, did you want to talk about this?
Sure.
Thank you.
How do you explain source to an unconscious person? I mean, I think first and foremost, I don't really think it's meant to be understood on the level of mind. I don't think you can. So to try to express that or convey it to somebody, I think it's the $1 million question I think that every human asks them along the way: what is God? what has got to you more so. The best analogy I could give of that would be simply to, kind of referring back to the Tao. It is the source of everything. It's energy. We are, an extension of source. It's the intelligence that mandates everything, I suppose, or that governs everything, I should say. I mean, I don't even know where to go with that. As energy beings here, the intelligence of everything that is, the nothingness that allows everything to be, the greater intelligence. I often tell people or ask them, what is more intelligent than the human mind? And of course, the obvious is the intelligence that created it. How does our hearts beat between 77 and 82 beats per minute? How does our body temperatures regulate at 98.7 precisely? So, to not think that there's a greater intelligence that governs all this, and to not think that we are a part of that because we are of it, would be, I don't know, can't put a word on that, but it is the source of everything, that allows everything to be. That's the best answer I could give on that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caesar. Travis, did you want to talk about the source? How do I explain it to somebody who's unconscious? Thank you.
Sure. I feel like there's a lot of different directions I could go, but I think it's been touched on amongst the panel already a bit, that it is, in a sense, beyond our ability to understand. It surpasses understanding, conceptual understanding, and so, and it's in a way it is unexplainable, and so there's that. That being said, I'll just add this to the pool of reflections on this, is that the more that, I'll just use myself as the example, the more that I can get in touch with life at its source, the more that I can stabilize deeply in alignment and in resonance with source, as it's being called here, the better I'll be able to come up with a spontaneous, appropriate response to meet that person wherever they are. I think that if we're in touch, it can arise spontaneously and naturally through us. So I'll just add that.
Thank you, Travis.
Mm-hmm.
To be a demonstration for it.
Just allow it to happen.
The thou shall always be nameless. The thou shall, the moment you name it, it no longer is the thou, right? So the moment you start to speak about the indescribable, it no longer is, it becomes words, thought formations. So thank you. Kelly.
Well, this is always a perennial reoccurring question. A lot of people that knew me 20 years ago when I was doing healing work, they run into me and they either see me or they don't. And sometimes when they see me, they realize how much I've changed. And yeah, they'll ask me. And one of the ways that I address this question, or dealing with people who are not as present, not as conscious, not as awake, is I say that I decided to learn more about myself, and I realized that I was a very spiritual person. And I tend to avoid, or I tend not to avoid, but I tend not to talk about the concept of source, because as Caesar said, it's like, how do you even begin to explain something like that to someone who is not, you know, even remotely interested or looking at that kind of a concept, that kind of a big picture concept. I'll mention, you know, I found a great book, you know, you might be interested in it, who knows, just casual thing. Because people who, my experience, people who are unconscious or not awake will tend to resist any promotion of any idea or concept or information that goes contrary to their belief system. So I like to, you know, in a friendly way, casually offer, oh, I, you know, found this amazing book, or I found this, you know, this author's really, really cool. And, you know, I really like the concepts. It's really easy to read, you know, makes a lot of sense kind of thing. I do that a lot. I do that an awful lot. I do not go into, you know, even in the martial arts world, I do not go into some of the esoteric disciplines or some of the things that I've trained in that defy the perceived concepts of linear 3D reality, because most people are not ready, or even skill sets, developing certain skill sets. Unless someone has actually experienced it, it is literally impossible to have the conversation for real. So understanding how to listen to the other person, how to listen to where the other person is, and to be present with them, and to, you know, appreciate that moment of being able to connect and offer a space of, you know, exchanging information, is how I like to look at it. Yeah, and if someone is noticing the change, then that means that they can feel the change in you, which is a great indication that they might actually be open to having a conversation that goes a lot deeper than just, you know, the casual, daily, superficial things. So that's how I generally approach and deal and interact with people who are not as awake, I guess, or have not invested in themselves in a way that has opened their eyes and their minds and the hearts yet to deeper aspects of reality, of loving kindness and compassion.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for that tip that suggests them a book.
Yep. Yeah, she's like, oh, hey, you know, blah.
That's the definition of source. It's in a book. Thank you.
Well, I mean, you want to define source. There's all sorts of different ways to do that if the person is actually interested in that kind of conversation. So yeah, actually to address how do you explain source, I really like what Caesar said. I really like what April said, and Travis, you know, that space inside of us where we feel that awe and that joy and the great peace in the moments of bliss and happiness. And that moment, that space inside our hearts where we can feel at peace with absolutely everything in the universe. And that's about as simple and basic a way as I would explain source to people. But, you know, obviously it's much more. I mean, you know, it's the source. So it's,
I don't know, like, how would an unconscious person understand? Like, if you were to say, I am so totally and utterly still in that moment that I'm completely aligned with my inner being. And in that alignment, I have the connection to source.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's another, yeah.
How do you explain it?
How do you, yeah.
It's an experience, so you cannot explain it.
As I said, if you haven't experienced it,
you cannot explain it. Thank you, Kelly. Eileen, did you want to speak about this topic or your experience? Thank you.
Sorry. I was just going to say that I know I've brought this up before, that I try and just be a role model. But if somebody specifically asks me, which I've had happen a few times, I'll give them facts about my personal journey. So things that I may have changed or things that I may have read. Not saying that they should or tell them what to do, but just that this is kind of what started my journey. But I also share information with friends and family about like books that I recommend or specific meditations that I like. But I don't think I've ever had anybody specifically ask me about, say, source or anything like that, because again, they're not there yet. If they were asking that type of a question, then I feel like I would answer it in the presence of whatever that moment was. But for me, I wouldn't even understand that until I felt it myself. So that's it.
Thank you, Eileen. I sometimes put it in the sense of mindfulness, right? Because that's a very generic, being mindful is also when we can say we are connected to something higher. So it's a very generic way of explaining it. I know Faith joined after Tina. So Faith, did you have a question or you wanted to share something? No? Okay, you're just listening? Thank you. Okay. Linda, I know you joined. Did you want to share something, or are you just listening?
Well, actually, I had just sort of emailed to Eileen going, what am I doing here? Am I supposed to have a question? But I wouldn't mind commenting on the question around if someone comes to you and asks what you're doing. And the way I approach it, and I work with students, I talk about energy and the purity of energy and the divine energy. I will bring that in. And I talk about being in the now and the ever present. And Travis, I just wanted to mention when you talked about reincarnation and past life regression, I'm actually a regressionist. So I do past life and I do life between lives journey. And I would actually agree with what you're saying because there is no linear time. But we're linearly thinking about linear time and that the present is always now. So if you look at the idea of parallel lives or multi-universes, there is, I believe, the past life regression does. And I've because I'm a regressionist, I can hands down say I believe in the process, but the understanding of the process, that it's all happening in the now. And so what I believe is happening is rather than tapping into their past lives, they're actually tapping into a current lifetime that they're experiencing on a parallel multiverse universe that's happening in the now. So I just wanted to mention that. And then there was another thing I wanted to mention, if I may. With Oprah, I believe Oprah actually doesn't like the radio because she cannot control or she cannot choose what it is she wants to listen to. And so she tends to move towards, my understanding of Oprah is really bringing into her environment and surrounding her environment with love and peace, things that she resonates with. And I understand that a piece of that, and not just, and I agree with everyone else, but in addition, I was thinking that what she likes to do is she likes to create a harmonic environment and connect that way and not allow the negativity of news and propaganda into her sort of space. So that's what I have to say. And I'm sorry, I don't really have a question.
Thank you, Linda. It was either or. It was either a question or if you had some insights or wisdom. So thank you for sharing your insights and wisdom. We are grateful for it. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I think it was one teacher, I don't know if it was Jill Bolte Taylor. It may be Jill Bolte Taylor who said she used to have a sign outside in her office, be responsible for the energy you bring into my space, right? So it seems like Oprah has adopted that, maybe not verbally just saying be responsible for the energy that you bring into this space, but through action, be responsible for the energy.
And if I may add one more thing, to the lady who was talking about, losing her pet through the regressions. Most animals do not reincarnate. However, those animals that have been loved, the energy is kept to reunite, to connect with. But the rest of animals that are not pets or not regarded just get recycled into energy. So that I'm just saying that from the regressions that I've done and the journey of the soul work that I've done. So yes, I know I've talked a lot. Thank you.
No, you're more than welcome to speak, Linda. I think that's what she can do if she wants to. I didn't quite read the question from Pam. She can go into her stillness and still connect with her pet. Yes. That's what Eckhart would say.
Yes, because energy can't be destroyed, only transmuted, right?
That's great. Tina added, this was asked over the phone, so they were just asking what was I learning. They are trying to find their way and had asked. I think we did go through the question quite.
Yeah, we did. I think she's just clarifying.
So Linda was talking about Pam asking this question about, I lost my 12-year-old dog this past year, and I'm grieving terribly, especially this time of year, her favorite time of year. Tell me, please, how do I cope with this terrible feeling of loss? And then there's more, so grief over a pet, right? Kelly, did you want to get started? I know Linda has touched upon it already, so she's given us insights. Did y'all want to go around and speak about this? Thank you. And that would be the last question that we address. Thank you.
Well, grief to me has always been an amazing threshold event when I have lost pets or loved ones. And, animals become like family. When an animal or a pet, a member of our families, I even have a hard time like referring to to a pet as a pet, because I consider any aspect of family to be just family, whether or not it's two-legged or four-legged. And we as humans adore and cherish and love connection. And the thing about animals is that they have this authenticity of connection that we always hope to find in humans. And this is one of the reasons why losing or having a pet, a family member pass, a four-legged family member pass, can be a real challenge, because there's an authenticity of connection that changes, and we are no longer able to connect with this space, with this joy, just the simple joy of being able to play in the leaves with the dog. You know, I grew up with a dog and cats out on the farm, out in the country. I've had dogs here in the house, and I love animals. I mean, animals are so beautiful. Just the simple joys that they bring to us are incredibly touching and priceless in our human lives. And having the loss of a pet, of a family member, you know, it's a time of reflection. And I always view the grief that comes up from the passing of a four-legged family member as an opportunity to reflect on the depth of the grief, as the depth of the love that was shared, and the depth of the authenticity that was shared, and the joy that was present in that connection. And yeah, it is hard. Grief is hard. You know, I'm not about to say otherwise. Grief is an opportunity to listen to our heart and to cherish those memories. I mean, honestly, you know, like, you know, what to do. So I cannot honestly speak to that, because that's a personal process for everybody. Grief is a beautiful key to see how deep we can feel, though, and how deep we actually do feel, and how deep a connection with a four-legged family member can actually be. And that's a beautiful thing. And that is how I have always looked at four-legged family members. And, you know, or even, you know, the birds that my grandma used to keep all the time. You know, I have friends who keep rabbits. It doesn't matter. That authenticity of the animal kingdom is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful connection. And I feel, you know, that grief is also a reflection of the gratitude that we as humans can share such a connection with a four-legged family member.
Thank you, Kelly. Eileen, did you want to talk about this topic that Pam brought up about grief over a pet?
I feel like I've talked about this before. I do think, I just want to comment on something that Kelly said, that it would kind of make sense why we gravitate so much towards them, because they are naturally at that state that we're all so desperately trying to get to. They're there naturally. So it just makes me think that, like, why, you know, someone like my son just always has to be with the family dog, or we have a rabbit too. But it would make sense why that grieving process seems so intense when it comes, even though you would think the pet, maybe 10, 15 years. But yeah, that comment really struck me that he mentioned. It makes sense.
Thank you, Eileen. The connection to our pets. Travis, did you want to talk about?
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. I had a dog for almost 15 years. That I was able to take him with me to work. We were attached at the hip, and I don't know if I've ever spent so much intimate time with any other being in this incarnation as I did my dog. And it's funny, in light of some of the things we've touched on earlier, I even had a point probably 10 years into my relationship with my dog where it seemed to me as though he was a teacher, a spiritual teacher of mine from another lifetime, incarnated as my dog. And it took me a good decade to recognize my most beloved teacher. So that's funny to say in light of what I was saying earlier about reincarnation. But, and I'd be curious to talk with you, Linda, about some of these things sometime, maybe. What I would, you know, I've lost a sister. I've lost my mother. I've lost my dog. I've reflected a bit just in the past week or so on detachment. I kind of had a moment where I thought, oh, I get it. Detachment, the whole detachment thing. And I realized we don't have to be detached of everything. It's only that which is transient and fleeting that we have to be detached from. And that's exactly why, is because whether or not we're attached, we will have to let go, whether or not we agree to or want to. So we can either let go willingly or we can let go begrudgingly. But it's an observable, inevitable reality. So the good news is that if it's not fleeting, you don't have to be detached from it and you don't have to let go. It will never leave you and you don't have to worry about that. So that's some good news. And I know for me, I remember when my sister died when I was 14, and I remember wondering if I was well. Let me stay focused here. I remember thinking, what would she like to see? And it made me happy to hold my head up high and continue to live my life in joy and to not grieve for the loss of my sister, because I know that's not what she'd like to see in me. That doesn't please her on the other side, to see me grieve. So I say to Pam, don't grieve for your dog. It's okay. It's okay to grieve for a while. You know, initially, like when my dog died, it felt like I got shot in the chest. But that passed, and my love for my dog shines just as bright today as it did back then. He's enshrined in my heart forever. The love is alive, and I know that makes my dog happy in whatever state or realm or way he is. I still feel him with me. He still comes to me in my dreams. And same with my mother. I know my mother is pleased to see me not grieve, to see me enjoy, to see me not weep for her being gone. I've done that enough, and I might have a time. It's not to say don't welcome those feelings, but just that I feel like that's the great honor that we can do our loved ones when they come to pass, is to be in joy, to enjoy our being and to enjoy our love for them, and in whatever way or dimension or realm or however it works, I'm not entirely certain, but they can enjoy us too. And so that's what I say is just to find that love and what makes one joyous about their dog, because it's such a beautiful kind of relationship too, I think, as has been touched on in the circle here today. And so just something so wonderful. And but to eventually find that place of acceptance, because it's just an utter inevitability. All of us on this panel here will be gone one day. It's just what happens. And it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. So that's my share.
Thank you, Travis. When Kelly was speaking, I did think of the one fundamental lesson that we learned from Eckhart Tolle is impermanence of form. If he didn't learn impermanence of form from his two books, The Power of Now, then we have not done enough work between Our New Earth and The Power of Now. All structures are unstable. I can never forget that. So that's what the spiritual lesson behind things that are near and dear to us but pass away is showing is impermanent, the spiritual lesson of detachment, because there's impermanence, all forms are impermanent. And the only permanent thing is the infinite, the eternal, the formlessness in our essence of who we are. Once we know of that, all this is okay. This 3D world is perfectly, all is well, right? So thank you. Thank you for that lesson. I know Caesar's been nodding his head a lot. So what were you going to say, Caesar?
I was going to say everything everybody else said. I mean, in a nutshell, you know, law of impermanence, exactly. That's what I was thinking the whole time. And then, the non-attachment thing, what makes us happy today will make us sad tomorrow. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And Travis touched on the love you feel for an animal. If you can't recognize the love of an animal, having never talked back or disagreed with you, always have been there when you were sad, licking your tears, you can kind of understand what love really is, because like Eckhart says, most people confuse love for attachment or clinginess. And to know that kind of love is love. I mean, there's no conditions put on it. And that is the true essence of love. That is the nature of who and what we are. So, of course, when things fade away and cease to exist in this world of form, it definitely can create pain, and it does. To understand the law of impermanence, obviously, is the biggest thing we can touch on and understand to make the grieving process a little better. And then in regards to the grieving process, I believe there's 5 stages to it, yes. And I think that is designed on a psychological level to get you to suffer enough to the point where the 5th stage is acceptance, which brings us to that. So, my advice for somebody who lost a pet who's grieving would be to, first and foremost, understand that. Celebrate the life. Clean up the thinking a little bit on what your perspective is of death, because if you understand there is no death, it's obviously hard to grieve that. And they're always in your presence, but you have to be at that level, the vibrational level of love and gratitude, peace and joy, for them to recognize you, because that's what they are. That's the level of vibration that they're, that's their frequency. So it is important to become that. And then you can actually feel their presence when you are vibrating at that frequency. So I would say celebrate. I know it's hard, but at some point, I think after a while, grieving is kind of selfish. Why are we crying? Why are we sad? Is a question I had to ask myself at times. And I came up with, it was very selfish of me to do so. I'm crying and I'm sad because I miss this person or my pet. And initially, I think, I don't care how awoke we are or how much we understand that there is no death, there, the non-attachment thing and law of impermanence, you're going to get poked in the heart when you lose somebody. How long that takes to get over it, to accept it, to surrender to it is, completely up to you. But, acceptance is the spiritual lesson. If you can turn the understanding, one of the most difficult things you'll ever face is losing somebody or losing a pet. To me, it's the same thing. That great pain that we endure turns into a gift. So to have somebody die, which everybody's going to quote unquote die, to turn that and allow it to be a gift of understanding would probably be the greatest gift you could ever receive, coming from the most tragic thing that you deem tragic and the most hurtful thing you ever experienced can wind up to be the greatest gift as a result of them passing. I don't know if that makes sense, but there is a gift, there is a lesson within that, and you just have to open your eyes, be open to the, to the fact that is the reality of, at least for me and many other people. Turn the passing into an accepted gift that you now have to learn understanding and carry on and, celebrate with gratitude and In love and peace. That's all.
Thank you, Caesar.
Thank you.
I think I heard Dr. Deepak Chopra tell somebody who actually lost a relative and they were grieving after a year. He said, past a year, if you're still grieving, then no longer is the grief of the person passing away. It's more a psychological, you're keeping it alive. So I would have Pam examine, is it what Eckhart says, you're having a thought, my lost pet, that thought feeding your pain body and the pain body causing emotional grief. And all it is that cycle, pain body creating emotion, and then the thought creating the pain, feeding into the pain body, like the pain body feeding into that thought. So what you're saying, Caesar, is correct. They know that the grief needs to pass, and then connect to you or celebrate that spirit by going into that depth of your presence where that pet is not lost. We experience this pet in our consciousness. When we are in that depth of consciousness, we can re-experience them. There is no, like Linda said, right? Energy can never be created or destroyed. So the pet is always with you. It's just in another energy form. So knowing of that, experience that in your stillness. So thank you, Caesar. April, did you want to talk about this topic, please? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a couple things here, which basically everybody's already hit on. Honestly, animals offer unconditional love. That's what they offer, unconditional love. They just love you. They're happy that you come in the door. They don't, you know, and I think that's, I have a couple daughters who seem to be, they align with animals more. And what I have found is people that tend to align with animals more, it's funny because you'll hear them say they can't stand people, but they love animals, right? So, well, animals don't really argue back, and they don't really have a whole lot of opinions, and they don't care what color your hair is. And so it's the unconditional love. The other thing is that emotions, remember, are an energy state within the body. They leave all on their own. They do not stay. We make them stay, or we make them come back by the stories. So I would, again, like you said, I would question the story. At this point, what's the story that's attached? Because it's been, sounds like about a year that this animal has passed. So that would be another thing. People who pass definitely can come through dreams. I actually just lost my cat a couple months ago. I lost my cat who was, he had quite, I don't even know how to put his personality. He knew what he was not supposed to do, and he knew, like, he would get mad at me. And you guys, I'm not kidding you. He would literally get on the top of my TV and walk that 1-inch line and look at me while he was doing it. Like, so he didn't come home, which is very odd for him. And about 3 days after I was sleeping, and he came, and this is just like his personality, and he literally ran to my face, like, and I jumped up out of a sleep, and I was like, Chaps. And that's how I knew that he had passed, that he, I don't know if he's in the woods or, so they can come to you in dreams. I also, when I do readings, I always get animals on the other side. Always. I get birds, cats, dogs. I don't know about the reincarnation, if they don't reincarnate or if they do. Never really run into that, but I do know, I can promise you, they are also on the other side because they are energy. So I guess my overall thing is I would look into whatever story is being attached. Again, it doesn't matter if you're an animal, you're a person. it doesn't matter. If it is your time, it is your time, period. There are no exceptions to the rule. If you're meant to be saved, God does not get you on the other side and say, sorry, my bad. Oops, he just doesn't do that, right? And, you know, I have found with all the numerous losses in my life that they do resurface after time. They do. They resurface on anniversaries, not just from our own memories, but from on a biological level in our bodies. And that's okay. But make sure you're watching the stories you're attaching and enjoy them. Laugh. I pick on my mother all the time and she's not here. I do. I love it. My brother, I'm always teasing him. So that's enough. And chaps, I just told you about chaps. You know, so to me, that's how I do it. I keep them alive, and I love that they annoyed me, and it brings me peace, and it heals that wound, I think, when you do it that way.
Thank you, April. I love the pointer of the dream state. A dream state not only for a past, a pet that has passed away or a loved one that has passed away. Dream state is actually the state where all solutions to our problems, challenges is being brought to us. So the more we can remember, so that's a great pointer, that they will come or the dream state will show you what your solution needs to be to a problem. So if we get into the habit of actually dreaming more and more, that's the best thing. I think what they say is if you sleep for 8 hours, you cannot remember your dreams. So you have to sleep in a cycle of 4 hours to 6 hours, and then you may be able to remember your dream, and the dream will, because it's consciousness leaving the body and coming back, it's bringing information to heal. So the most healing happens actually in the dream state. So thank you for that, April. Louise, did you want to talk about this question of a pet that has passed away and the grief over it? Thank you. You'll be the last person that speaks.
Yeah. No, I feel like everybody really, especially the last things that April was saying, is basically that what I was going to say as well is that, you know, oops, these kids are getting restless. Sorry. But yes, I think that everyone, you know, beautifully.
Perfect.
Thank you.
It has been a long night, so thanks to Linda and is it Faith? We're gonna sign off, Faith. So thank you so much for honoring us with your presence, Linda, Tina, and everybody on the panel and everybody out there. Thank you for your insights and wisdom. It's an honor and a privilege. So humbled. Infinite gratitude for all that y'all contribute. We'll see y'all next week and have a fantastic week. Many blessings. Much love.
Thank you, Poonam. Thank you, everybody. Good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night, Kelly.